What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Runaway Train Sports Podcast. I am your host, Dakota, or Boiler in Texas on most social media platforms. Welcome in. We're coming off of a tough loss to Wisconsin. The Purdue Boilermakers are, and they host the Illinois Fighting Illini on homecoming weekend. We're going to talk about it as well as take a look around the Big Ten this week. A little bit of an underwhelming slate of games this weekend, but there are a couple of that we can touch on and get a little have a little fun with. But we're going to start with the Illinois Fighting Illini, currently sitting at 2-2 on the season. Looking at their schedule so far, their 2 wins coming against Toledo and Florida Atlantic at home, and their 2 losses coming at Kansas 34-23 and home versus Penn State 30-13. Now, obviously, I think the biggest talking point in terms of their schedule so far is that home game against Penn State. I don't know if Illinois played a better game this season than that game in that loss against Penn State. They were able to hold the Nittany Lions pretty much in check for a lot of the game, but eventually Penn State just manages to do Penn State things with the level of talent that they have and are able to kind of just walk away with it towards the end for a 17-point win. But they come to West Lafayette. The game's going to be hosted on Peacock. So basically saying nobody's going to watch it, but you know what? I am. I paid for my Peacock subscription to see Purdue lose to Syracuse. So lovely days, lovely days. But nonetheless, it's homecoming for Purdue. Purdue's 1-3, and we're begging for a win at home in Ross-Ade. Obviously, Purdue's lone win coming on the road at Virginia Tech. So let's take a look at the Illinois Fighting Illini and see what we have in store for us this weekend. Starting off, let's go ahead hit the key notes here. Luke Altmaier, the Illinois QB, currently completing 77 of 118 passes for 874 yards this year, completion percentage of 65%. I think this is a pretty decent, Big Ten West quarterback, obviously. Not that that's a very high bar to set as of now. I think the more important stats to take a look at are the touchdowns and interceptions. He currently has 4 touchdowns to 7 interceptions and has been sacked a total of 13 times this season. Now, I think this actually bodes very, very well for Purdue. Obviously, playing this at home, I expect Purdue to come out pretty inspired. And I'm hoping that they'll be able to take advantage of an Illinois, front line that doesn't look too inspiring one way or another. But Altmaier kind of runs the show there for Illinois. In the rushing game, they have a bit of a running back by committee, but they really don't. Reggie Love III obviously leading the way with 248 yards on the season so far. Luke Altmaier also second on the team in rushing with 146. And then Josh McCray looks like the backup with 121, and then from there down it's kind of situational and less important. But this is a team that I think is not going to do any. This is going to be a pretty solid matchup. I think if you look at the advanced stats, this looks to play out as a very balanced game, Purdue versus Illinois, and it's going to come down to who's going to make the plays and who's going to have the juice to kind of step in and win a game in the Big Ten West. Obviously, there's a little bit more to this game than just being conference and a rivalry for the Cannon. Obviously, Ryan Walters famously coming to Purdue after being the Illinois defensive coordinator, leading Illinois to being one of the top scoring defenses in the country last season, earns Ryan Walters the head coaching position in West Lafayette. The first matchup between BERT and Ryan Walters. Hopefully, Purdue can come out on top in this one, but it's all going to come down to, I think, on defense. I think for this team, this Purdue team specifically, it's all going to come down to defense. Are they going to be able to do enough to get stops, not make any of those big mistakes and make those, miss those big plays and allow Illinois to get into a rhythm like we've seen in these past couple of games against Syracuse and Wisconsin? I think the biggest thing that we're going to have to keep an eye on, it's the biggest thing we're going to say until they can really stop it, is the quarterback running. Many times this season we've seen so far, it just seems like we don't get a little sound on the edge and the quarterback's able to sneak through for big runs when it matters most. I think it's going to be something to keep an eye on. Obviously, Altmaier's the second leading rusher on the Illinois team, and so he's definitely shown the ability and the the confidence to kind of get out of the pocket and get some yards with his legs. And so we're going to have to do what, we've been asking them to do and get stops on defense and keep the quarterback in check. Because I think if you force Luke Altmaier to throw the ball, I think that's where we're going to really get the big results. I mean, obviously he's completing 65% of his passes, but for only 874 yards on the season is definitely respectable. But for reference, Hudson Card has already eclipsed 1,000 yards this season with 1,027, and even he's completing 63% of his passes. And so if you look at it in context, really it's pretty comparable what Purdue has versus what Illinois has. And so I think this really is going to come down to who's going to be more mentally sound, who's going to come out with more to play for, more to lose, and I think, honestly, that's Purdue. I think whether it happens or not, I'm getting pretty confident. Once again, I'm reaching that point in the week where I feel pretty good about Purdue coming out for a win. Obviously, I think if this game was on the road, I'd probably feel a little different. But with this game at home, student section sold out in a homecoming game against Illinois. Yes, it's on Peacock, but it is what it is. I'm finding it hard. It's obviously going to be a tight game. I don't think this is a game that Purdue's going to run away with it. In the end, I think the Illinois defense has obviously shown propensity to make the plays that we saw in the Penn State game, kind of holding that Penn State offense to only 30 points. I think this is a game that both teams are going to want to win. They both look at it as extremely winnable games, and it may just come down to who can get the stops. Purdue's obviously become a bit of a turnover-happy team these last few weeks. Now, obviously, one of the turnovers last week against Wisconsin is the definition of debatable. But at the same time, it is what it is, and this is going to be a game that Purdue's going to have to come out and take a win. I think the offense should look a lot better against an Illinois defense that has looked pretty okay. I think the defense is definitely one of the stronger points of this Illinois team. But at the same time, I think the weapons that Purdue has, and Purdue does have weapons, it's all about just making the most of them. I think it should be good enough to win Purdue the game. Kind of let's keep going. Let's stop the rambling by me, and let's actually take a look at some numbers and see exactly what we got going for us this season, not this season, for this weekend against Illinois. Taking a look at further down the Illinois offense, kind of looking at the advanced stats. Illinois' third down percentage, 37%, pretty good for a third down team. They're 17 of 46 on the season. Obviously, I think third down efficiency has been something that the Purdue defense has been a little bit. We'll go for how to put this, bad. And those are the plays that I'm talking about getting cleaned up. This is something that Purdue really needs to get under control. And if we can force Illinois into bad positions, we need to be able to take advantage and get off the field, give the offense an opportunity to get back on the field and make some stuff happen. And so it's going to be something. I keep saying it's going to be something to keep an eye on. It's apparently going to be something to keep an eye on every single night out. That it is what it is. And honestly, the more I look at these numbers, the more I think this really just comes down to the age-old question of execution, drive, and who's got the juice. Who's going to go out there and make you a play? Is it going to be Hudson Card? Is it going to be Maccabee? Tyrone Tracy has been extremely valuable to this Purdue offense, putting in some very good results. He's currently on 176 yards on the season, just behind Devin Maccabee's 212. We've seen Maccabee kind of take a step back. I'd love to see this as an opportunity to get both of them going and put them in positions to succeed. I know I've said this all the time. We've seen what Maccabee is able to do last season over the course of 2/3 of a season, and I'd really, really love to see him in a position to kind of continue getting back into that kind of flow. And even if he doesn't, we've seen Tyrone Tracy Jr. come in and be absolutely fantastic in the running game, breaking up multiple 15-plus yard touchdowns this season so far. Not something we routinely saw last season or under any Brom offenses. And with Gus Hartwig coming back on the offensive line, I'm expecting to see another big jump by this offensive line, kind of getting another week of everyone kind of being together, working together, and continuing to gel on that front line. And then behind him, Hudson Card, I think, has been very good this season. I think there's definitely been moments and there's been some plays here or there I'm sure he would like back. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. And I think Hudson Card also has started to use his legs a little bit more, also getting in on the rushing game. He's almost eclipsed 100 yards on the season, but we've definitely seen some opportunities for him. Deion Burks, I think Purdue needs to focus getting Deion Burks the ball more. I think that's something that all of us can easily say for 100% certainty that needs to happen. Abdur-Rahman Yassin leading the team in receptions right now with 22 to Deion Burks 15. Now, I'm not saying we need to go full Charlie Jones or full Rondell Moore or full David Bell with Deion Burks, but what we've seen from Deion Burks is that he's been able to make these plays, and I think we need to utilize that more. I'm not saying you force feed him the ball, but I think there's got to be a way that this coaching staff can scheme around him and get him the ball in space more, because we saw it on the opening drive of the season that if you get him in space, sometimes good things happen. Now, again, that's not to take anything away from Yassin, who's having a very productive season so far. Sheffield, who's had a couple of very big catches. Max Clare still coming out and balling, by the way. Still so excited for that guy. Very excited to see what he can do. I just think there's opportunity here to get this receiving core going a little bit more and hopefully putting them in better positions. And I'm hoping that begins while continuing to get this rushing attack going. At this point, I'm already looking forward to doing my midseason review of my preseason predictions, and my Devin Mockbee 1,000-yard rusher is currently looking a little bit rough. But as a team, Purdue's well on their way to rushing for over 1,000 yards. We're currently sitting at 562. I think we'll pass that pretty much towards the midpoint of this season if we continue on this track. I'd love to see one of our guys kind of break out and really solidify themselves as a ground threat. I think that would do this offense absolutely wonders. But it is what it is. I think another big question is going to become on the availability result for this week. I know we've had some guys kind of banged up here and there, and it's been some tough injuries to see as well. But I'll reserve too much speculation one way or another. But I think especially health on the defensive line is going to be a big point. As I think this defensive line and linebacking group can really take advantage of an Illinois offense that I think looks pretty okay. I mean, they've obviously been able to let up a lot of sacks so far this season. Allmeyer currently being sacked 13 times. Again, for reference, Card has only been sacked 6 times through 4 games. So I mean, just by math, Illinois is letting up over 3 sacks a game right now, which is crazy, and I'm hoping that trend can continue, especially with guys like Nick Scourton and Kedrick Jenkins. I'm not sure who's going to be available in the linebacking core, but I'm sure we'll also see hopefully some good things from them as well. But I feel like I just rambled on and continued to say the exact same things that I really did. So let's just sum it up. Let's sum up Illinois with this. The three key points to Purdue beating Illinois this weekend is 1, QB contain. Keeping the quarterback honest in the pocket and forcing Luke Allmeyer to beat us with his arm. Now, with that said, that also comes with the added benefit of forcing him to stay in the pocket and give our defensive line opportunity to beat the Illinois offensive line and get to the quarterback and make him make mistakes. I think if we're able to do that, good things obviously will happen. The second key point, we are going to stay on defense, and it's going to be third down efficiency. I think it's going to be getting off the field. I think it's containing Illinois, keeping them from making those big plays, and moving the chains on third and long, and keeping those drives extended going, and taking advantage of getting them off the field and giving the ball back to our offense, which I think only good things can happen if you do that. And then lastly, for offense, we're going to say it every single week, or at least I'm going to think it every single week. This is all going to come down to Hudson Card and his decision making. I think we've seen some very good things in the receiving game so far, and while it hasn't necessarily led to a lot of wins, I think we've seen a lot of very but some very positive things come from this receiving core. And I think Hudson Card, when he's able to get through his progressions, able to get the ball where he wants, good things happen. We've seen him make some pretty disastrous mistakes in terms of turnovers and interceptions, fumbles and interceptions these last few weekends out. I'm hoping to see that cleaned up against an Illinois defense that I don't think is going to be anything too special, especially after playing a Syracuse team that apparently looks pretty good and a Wisconsin team that just always seems to have our number. And it just always felt like something was going to go wrong in that game. And it did. But I think against Illinois, I'm hoping we'll see it get back to a classic no turnovers game. If Purdue, and a secret fourth point, if Purdue can somehow win the turnover battle, or at least stay even at 0-all, I think good things will happen and Purdue will walk away with that one. So if I'm going to give my official prediction as of right now, I think Purdue wins 27-24. I think it's going to be a close game. I'm not predicting a walk-off field goal or anything. But I think this is going to be a close game, and it might be a game that might come down to our defense on the field trying to get a stop and keeping Illinois from winning it at the death. But that's what I see. A 27-24 type game. That basically plays out to pretty much exactly as these teams have played so far. I think I saw that Purdue is averaging 24 points a game. Yeah, right on 24 points a game, and Illinois on 22. So, give a couple more to Illinois there and a few more to Purdue there. And I think if Purdue, we just seems like a game where we're going to play to our averages. And I would love to see Ryan Walters take down BERT in their first meeting in Ross-Ade. And it would be a lovely opportunity to give Ryan Walters his actual first win in Ross-Ade Stadium this season, as his only win as the Purdue head coach has come on the road in Blacksburg. But that does it with the Purdue talk. Let's go ahead and take a look around the Big Ten games this weekend. Like I said, there's nothing too exciting, but there are a couple of very interesting games. Let's run through them real quick. We have Penn State at Northwestern. Not really going to talk about that one. Penn State should roll in that one pretty smoothly. We have Louisiana at Minnesota. Now, this one could get spicy, as Minnesota has looked very vulnerable this season, and so it really might just come down to which Minnesota team decides to show up. But at the same time, I don't see Minnesota, losing this one, or probably even keeping it in single digits. So unless things get spicy, I don't really see too much coming from that. Michigan at Nebraska. Now, the simple fact that this one is at Nebraska kind of keeps me on my toes a little bit. Now, we've seen Nebraska kind of come out feisty in these sorts of games before fading late and kind of getting run off the field as the game wears on. I think we might see something similar here. But at the same time, Michigan has not necessarily looked too inspiring on offense. And so I think if things get a little weird out there in Lincoln, Nebraska, Michigan might not necessarily be on upset watch, but I think it'll be a little bit of a wake-up call for the Wolverines coming out of Nebraska in that one. Moving on, we have Indiana at Maryland. I think Maryland's offense is more than good enough to beat Indiana's defense, and I'm not sure and while I do think Indiana might be one of the better-ish offenses that Maryland has faced so far this season, at the same time, their play calling and their personnel just don't seem to fit together quite yet, similarly how Purdue has looked so far. I mean, Tagovailoa has thrown for 1,100 yards already. I don't see him slowing down, especially since this is in College Park. So I think Maryland kind of rolls in this one late. Illinois, Purdue, we've already covered. Wagner at Rutgers. Rutgers should absolutely roll. I don't even think there's a line set for this one. Rutgers should walk away. And I think one of the more interesting games, coming off of a goose egg in Happy Valley, Iowa hosts Michigan State, who just today, spoiler alert when I'm recording this, just today officially fired Mel Tucker for cause, getting out of that contract. And so it's going to be a very interesting weekend in Iowa. Obviously, the Iowa offense has been, rough to say the least. And then obviously Michigan State has just looked very uninspired this season. Obviously a lot of off-field distractions in this one, but it's going to come down to, I think Iowa probably wins this, although their defenses have looked pretty comparable so far if you just look at the numbers. But considering this one's in Kinnick in the night game, I think Iowa does win this one. Whether or not Michigan State can kind of keep it in check, who knows? Maryland was able to kind of walk all over them last week, but of course Maryland's offense is a big difference than Iowa. So I'm going to be watching that one in fascination. That one also on Peacock, so we're really just going to be rolling over directly from Purdue, Illinois to Iowa, Michigan State. But there you go. If I'm going to pick my non-Purdue game of the day to watch, I'd probably say Michigan at Nebraska. And if you want your true sickos matchup, Michigan State at Iowa. But I think that's pretty much all I had to say in this one. I mean, it feels like we're kind of talking through the same things all over and over again, and it's just going to seem like that, I think, until we see what this team is really made for. I think a lot of people online, thankfully, trying to shift this towards the Purdue fandom as a whole, I think a lot of people online are kind of finally accepting the fact that Purdue is not going to be too good this year. And while they may not be quite what we were hoping to be, I think everyone can also see that the potential that this crew has, and I think we'll continue to monitor and judge as we go along. But I think that'll wrap it up for me here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Runaway Train Sports podcast. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, at Boiler in Texas, pretty much anything. And also you can see, if you're listening to the audio only version and you prefer video, you can see this at Boiler in Texas on YouTube, and obviously vice versa. If you're watching the video version, you can find the Runaway Train Sports podcast on most social media and most podcasting platforms. But I think that'll do it for me here. Let me know what you think if you're watching the videos down below. And if you're listening to the audio only version, go ahead, hit the follow button. Go ahead, leave a rating, and let me know what you think. I can't wait to see Purdue take down Illinois this weekend. And as always, boiler up, hammer down, hail Purdue.